Welcome students. In today's video, we're going to take a look at how to identify the independent and dependent variables when looking at a word problem. And we're also going to take a look at how to create tables to represent situations or math word problems. Before we get started though, what do you call two friends who love math? Oh, they're algebros. Get it? Algebros? It's like algebra, but they're friends, so they're bros. It's algebra. No? Nothing? Okay. Anyway, taking a look at our presentation here, the first thing we need to know is what are independent and dependent variables, right? Before we can identify them, we have to understand what they are. Independent variables are going to be variables that are our x values, and we think of them like the cause, okay? Versus our y value or dependent variable, which is like the effect. So when we talk about variables in a situation, we can usually identify one of them as the cause, the thing that's making the change happen, and the other one as the effect, the thing that's the result of that change. So the independent variable is the x value, and that's the cause of the change. The dependent variable is the y value, which is the effect of the change. We're going to see that here in an example, and I think that will make it a little bit more easy to identify once you see it done for you. All right, so let's take a look. Our example says, Marcus reads for 30 minutes each night. He wants to determine the total number of minutes he will read over the course of a month. He wrote the equation T equals 30D to represent the total amount of time that he has spent reading, where T represents the total number of minutes read and D represents the number of days that he reads during the month. Determine which variable is independent and which is dependent. Then create a table to show how many minutes he has read in the first 7 days. All right, so there's a lot going on here. First of all, when we look at word problems with algebra, they're usually giving us the information we need for the problem, as well as defining the variables, and sometimes, like in this one, giving us the equation we need. When you combine all that together, it makes for a kind of a long problem, and it can be a little bit confusing, sometimes overwhelming, right? So one of our first steps here is let's just reread the problem, break it down, mark the text, right? So we know in the problem that he's reading 30 minutes each night, right? We're told that right away. And he wrote an equation, which we have here, which is T equals 30D, and that's to represent the total amount of time that he spends reading, where T represents the total number of minutes read. So T is how much time he spends reading, and D is the number of days that he reads during the month. Okay, so from that, we can identify which part of that is the cause and which part of that is the effect. So when I think about that, I know that my equation is T equals 30D. And when I think about the cause and the effect, the independent and dependent variable, the independent variable is going to be the cause of the change, right? Every day he reads 30 minutes. So it's the number of days that he reads is going to be the cause, because that's going to tell me how much time he spends reading. So he reads 30 minutes every day, right? If he reads for 10 days, I can figure out that it's just 30 times 10, which gives me 300, right? So the cause here is the independent variable, which is the D, or days. Right? And this is what we call the cause. And then the effect is the dependent variable, which means, what does that tell me? Right? If I know how many days he reads, well, what does that tell me? That tells me T, which is the total number of minutes. Okay, so the number of days, if I multiply that by 30, it tells me the number of minutes. So therefore, T is the cause, or the independent variable, and T is the dependent variable, which is the effect. All right, when we're looking at creating our table, we have to make sure we're setting this up correctly. On the left-hand side, we should always have our x value, or our independent variable. So my independent variable is always going to be on the left, and that is my x. My y value, or my dependent, is always going to be on the right. Again, cause before effect, right? Cause would be on the left, effect would be on the right. Making sure we label this is important. Labels help keep us organized. So I'm going to say days, which is D, and then we have total minutes, which is T. Now it says in the problem that we need to create a table for how many minutes he has read in the first 7 days. Well, that means that we're given the number of boxes for, if we count them, right, 1 through 7. First 7 days reading. So 1, 2, 3, and so on until we get to 7. Now this table just represents data points for Marcus's situation, right? If we substitute the number of days into our equation, it'll tell us how many total minutes he's read. My equation was given to me in the problem, t equals 30d. So if I substitute the value 1 for days, and now substituting means replacing, right? So I'm going to replace d now with 1. Whenever I substitute, I'm putting it in parentheses. I know that the 30 directly next to parentheses means multiplication. So therefore, my total amount of minutes read if he only reads for 1 day during the month is 30. Now, the pattern for this one is relatively simple, so I'll only do the next one just to show you, then we won't substitute them all in. My equation is the same, t equals 30d, but now I'm trying to determine how many total minutes he reads if he does this for 2 days. So I'll substitute 2 for d. I'm going to do my multiplication. 30 times 2 is 60. So I'll put 60 here. Now we can see that we're really just multiplying d times 30 to get t, right? So I'm really just multiplying by 30. 3 times 30 is 90. 4 times 30 is 120. And so on as we're going down. So 150, 180, 210. Now, when we look at this, right, the big thing here was identifying the independent and dependent variables. So if you can remember that independent is the cause, dependent is the effect, that our independent variable is always going to be our x value, which is always going to be on the left side of a table, and our dependent variable is always going to be the y value, which is on the right side of a table. If you can do that, then you're going to be successful here, right? So in this video, we talked about independent and dependent variables, as well as creating tables to represent our math situations that we're given. Hopefully you found this helpful. Make sure to click the like and subscribe button at the bottom so you can get alerted whenever we get more videos. And thank you very much for watching. Have a great day, guys.